Order! Order! You are an incorrigible delinquent at times. Behave yourself, man!
Now, should big business and corporations be made to choose sides when it comes to the social issues of the day? The question is a live one right now for companies headquartered in Atlanta, Georgia, where new voting amendments have just come into law. The legislation's dividing Republicans, who've passed them, from Democrats, who believe they disproportionately impact black voters and poorer neighbourhoods. Joe Biden has called them a return to the Jim Crow era of public racial segregation. Well, now some prominent company executives have spoken up against the new laws, prompting senior Republicans to warn that they are stepping into social issues they might come to regret. Last week it was Coca-Cola and Delta Airlines. Today, Major League Baseball decided to move its All-Star game from Atlanta to Colorado. They say Georgia's controversial new voting law is against their values, and they believe they have their employees and consumers on side. Now, some of the biggest names in golf have joined them. Atlanta's prestigious Masters tournament is set to begin later this week in Augusta, Georgia. One said that voting law should be the main focus of conversation this week when the eyes of the world are on it.
You know, the topic of voter rights and all that, that should be the topic that we talk about, not if we're here playing golf.
But a warning shot from Mitch McConnell, Republican minority leader in the now Democrat-controlled Senate, who warned companies not to get involved in political frays.
You know, Republicans drink Coca-Cola too. And we fly. And we like baseball.
And on cue, the most famous Diet Coke fan of them all, one Donald Trump, vowed he would be boycotting his favourite drink. Of course, corporate political activism isn't new. You could argue that companies are political every time they choose to donate to parties and campaigns, a policy McConnell himself thought should be preserved.
I'm not talking about political contributions.
But perhaps it points to a bigger trap for the companies themselves. Some of the most politically vocal on this issue have in fact been propping up the political careers of the very people who've introduced these new laws. Telecoms giant AT&T donated some $800,000 to the supporters of these proposed voting restrictions. A string of other household name firms appear on lists of other top donors too. So do corporations have the responsibility to dive into social issues? Or are they creating new hostages to fortune, holding themselves open to charges of hypocrisy, or accepting their goods or services may be boycotted by all those who now disagree with their own political position? Well, we're joined now by Aisha Moody-Mills, the Democratic political strategist, former CNN political commentator, and by Eric Bolling, Republican commentator and former Fox Business host. And Eric, if I can just start with you. One Business, Patagonia, has said it's urgent that businesses across the country take a stand and use their brands as a force for good in support of the democracy. Why isn't that right? What do you disagree with there?
So here's my thoughts on that. Businesses, their job, their whole reason for being in America, at least, is to create shareholder value. Shareholders buy into their businesses, and they have to increase. And the way you do that is by increasing sales. When the American politics has become so divided, there is no middle ground anymore in politics in America. It's far right and far left, and that's the undisputed truth, and there's very little in between. So when a business takes on something, and everything has become political, wearing a mask has become political, a voting law in the state of Georgia has become political, and even have ramifications within Major League Baseball. But when you pick a side as a business, you're alienating the other side. Now, typically in America, and I believe you'll have a liberal Democrat come on, and I would be remiss to say that this is the way it goes. Typically in America, liberals have always used the boycott as a tool, a gun, so to speak, pointing at corporate CEOs' heads, saying either you listen to us and do things our way, or we'll boycott your product. Conservatives in America have stepped away from that. I believe the time has come now. The pendulum has swung so far into this woke culture, cancel culture, liberal Democrat world that conservatives now need to step up and say, we're 50% of this country. If we do what you've done, these corporate CEOs who are listening, catering to only one side, will have to step up and listen to it or lose half their sales.
Let me hear from Aisha Moody-Mills then. Do you think businesses are tying themselves in knots when they respond to each and every cause that their consumers or their workers feel strongly about?
Well, first of all, let me just go back and address the rubbish that was just said. You know, this attack on liberals and boycotts as if, somehow, one, holding corporations accountable is a problem is just ridiculous. But listen, it's actually Donald Trump now who's the one that wants to claim, a boycott, and he's no longer going to drink Diet Coke, and he's going to tell his crazy conservative people to stop drinking Coke. So to put this on liberals is actually trying to change the narrative in the conversation. Here's the deal. The deal is that everybody, corporations should included, should be on the side of democracy in the countries that they operate in, right? So what's happening right now is that an issue, voting, which is just fundamentally a right for everybody in this country. It has nothing to do with whether you're a liberal or a conservative or a Democrat or Republican or none of the above, right? Not with any party. You should be able to go and vote. And you should have a fair opportunity and access to that ballot. It should not be made more complicated, difficult, or restrictive for you, no matter who you are, what walk of life you come from, how much money you have, what race you are, or what geographic region you live in, and certainly not what party you are. It should not be more difficult to vote. That is fundamental what we're talking about here. So what corporations are doing is they're saying, yeah, we don't want to get into the partisan muck, but at the end of the day, why is voting a partisan issue, right? Why can't everybody just access our democracy? And they are fundamentally taking a stand for fairness. Conservatives have a problem with that, though, because when the game is fair, they lose, which is why they're always trying to rig the game.
Let me ask you just that very first point, Eric. Are you going to be boycotting the companies that have...
No, so here, can I just clear something up? Major League Baseball pulled the All-Star game from Atlanta. Atlanta's 50% African-American, and they did it on the heels of what Aisha has been fed from the Biden administration, that somehow this voting rule is bad for African-Americans in the state of Georgia. They pulled it from the state of Georgia and put it into Denver, Colorado with 9.7%.
Okay, wait a second.
Allow me to finish. 9.7% African-American representation in Denver. Here's what they did to the African...
I'll bring you in 1 second, Aisha.
Here's what they did to the African-American community, minority businesses in Atlanta, in Cobb County. They took $100 million of revenue. They took 8,000 booked hotel rooms and they moved them out of the state and put them in a state and a city with far less diversity than the state of Atlanta. And by the way, if Aisha wants to complain about this, take it up with Stacey Abrams, who's the voting advocate in Georgia, who said it was a mistake. Take it up with both senators, who are both Democrats, one of them African-American, who said it was a mistake.
So the point is, just to broaden this out, the point that Stacey Abrams was making is that actually businesses are hurting Atlanta more by moving stuff out and by the activism and the stance they're taking. Aisha, do you want to respond to that one?
I do, because I think it's really rich for any Republican, especially a white man, to run around and claim that they care about the economic condition of black communities and black businesses when that's all a lie. Okay, there's nothing in their policies.
Just please let her finish.
That they've done. The other thing is that I don't work for the Biden administration.
Eric, I'm so sorry, we can't hear you. I'm going to let Aisha finish.
I don't work for the Biden administration, never have, but what I am is a black person in America. And everything that these voting laws stand for and what they look like are reminiscent to the Jim Crow policies that my family's lived under. Every single thing about it. So this is all about racial discrimination. And how dare you try to act like you are somehow a proponent of black people in businesses just to make a point and to try to create a wedge. It's ignorant and it's just disrespectful.
That's disgusting. I'm done. Put me off. That's disgusting. I am nowhere anything you're painting me to be. And the problem with American politics is exactly that. Because I'm white, you think I'm racist. That's BS. I'm done.
Will you just stay, Eric? Will you just stay for this question? So the question we've got, Aisha, is stay for one question, Eric. Let me put this to you because
I don't know why I'm staying here. I don't know why. I need an apology.
Let me put to you the question that Mitch McConnell was saying.
For being offended. No.
Aisha, okay. I think we've lost Eric. The point that Mitch McConnell was making, and I'll put this to you, Aisha, is that the more businesses enter this fray, the more that division happens, and then they end up with only half of America buying their products. Now, presumably, you don't want to see that, Advocate. You don't want to see things get even more divided, and you don't definitely want to see Georgia or any other state becoming poorer for these actions, do you?
I am not a corporate lobbyist. I am not a business lobbyist. But what I will say is this. The question becomes, and I think who should be in this conversation with us right now, is ask the companies why they're coming out and making any stance. Because what those companies will tell you, whether it's Coca-Cola or Major League Baseball or UPS or Delta Airlines or any of the companies that are based out in Georgia, is that they know that bigotry is bad for business. And what they fundamentally know is that creating these kind of policies and laws that Republicans want you to believe have to do with everything but what they really have to do with, which is bigotry and bias, is actually bad for people.
Okay.
And it's bad for business.
Let me just put this to you, because in the absence of Eric Bolling, I have to put forward the point that Republicans will make, which is that these laws have been introduced that actually correct things that have maybe been overlooked before the COVID era. Asking for voter registration, for example, or bring them into line with other states is not such a revolutionary or a racist move. What would you say to that?
And what I've always said to that, and what the data shows, because I operate in facts, is that that's all a lie and that's all a myth. They're actually not rectifying anything that's a real problem. First of all, there's been absolutely no evidence of voter fraud. So let's just start there, because so much of the guise of this is like, oh, our elections, are fraudulent. No, they're just losing elections, which is why they're trying to rig the game. There's actually no concrete problem that is data-based, that is being resolved by disallowing people to be given water while they're waiting in 8-hour lines in the hot sun. And by the way, the only reason that they're waiting for 8 hours to vote in the hot sun is because this bill intends to shrink the number of polling locations so that you can't vote.
We've run out of time, but thank you for joining us, and thank you for staying on.